So hello and welcome back to Living the Small Business Life. This is our last episode for season 2 and we've decided to have a bit of a wrap up. So we thought, given that we've had some guests on this time around, we might have a chat about the different episodes that we've done and kind of what we've learned. And also, I guess we started this conversation to really talk about the realities of running a small business. And I think we've got a really good flavour of that with our guests, haven't we?
100%, yeah. I think it's been really interesting to look at other people's journeys on running a small business life, and we've had some really nice people on board and doing the pods, and for me it's just been interesting at different people's views on running a business. We've had people that have done full planning, we've had people that did no planning whatsoever, and I think it's been really interesting.
I think there's been some things like common characteristics between people as well, drive, determination, that I've seen in our guests as well. So it'd be good to drill down into those a bit more.
Definitely. So firstly, should we just shout out all our fantastic guests? So we had Nikki and Emily who joined us from More Driver Solutions. They do driver logistics.
Great business as
well. We had Jo who joined us from Vision 29. So she works on internal communications and marketing. Ben and I went on the road and we filmed at Happydashery. So with Sarah and Carrie who are in retail. And then finally, as we were saying, we had our cameraman Wes. So Wes from Red Rascal Creative. Hi, Wes! So he has a greetings card company. So that's retail as well. And then obviously creative industries for the video editing and that kind of side of it. So we wrote down a few things that were kind of grouped together as key takeaways. Ben, you mentioned one, which I loved as well, is the fact that nobody has a plan, or if they did have a plan, they threw it out, or if they had a plan, they had a plan for a reason. So like Sarah and Carrie, for example, talked about creating the plan in order to try and get funding. Yeah. And I think that was a theme, wasn't it?
But most of the plans, I think you're right, most of the plans tend to go out the window because it doesn't matter how, it's not a mathematical science. You can't predict exactly what is going to happen. So I think a lot of these plans go out the window and a lot of people will fly by the seat of their pants. Well, we have, I know that, and 90% of the guests we've had on have done that, especially Wes.
I think Emily and Nikki from More Driver Solutions also said if they had had a plan, they would have ended up measuring their success against that plan. Yeah. So if you're not meeting it, but you might be doing other things really well, you'd then class yourself as a failure as well. Agreed. So I think that was something that they mentioned that was, having a rigid plan that you can't deviate from. Things evolve and change, don't they, very quickly. And I think you mentioned that in season 1, Ben, that you started off selling mobiles and within 6 weeks you were selling VoIP telephone systems, so the plans completely changed very quickly. Yeah. So
telephone systems, connectivity, it's just gone and gone and gone.
And Wes was saying that as well, the kind of flexibility of, oh, you do this, could you do this? And you're like, yeah, I think I could do that, so it's having the plan and you think you know what your business is for and who it's for, and then very quickly you're like, oh, actually could be doing VoIP telephones, could be doing different types of videography.
Absolutely. And Ben's famous saying, I'd rather have an 80% plan and execute it 100% than 100% plan and execute it at 80%.
That's probably right, by the way.
Right. Well, and also coming soon to YouTube Shorts.
Yes.
Because as Ben has just recited all the stats, all of our YouTube Shorts that have Ben in them have done better than any others. So,
yes, just stop
Pearls of wisdom.
Stop it, please. Come on.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue that theme, though, because I remember in season 1, when we did the episode and all the questions were from Ben from AI, one of them was, what do you think people wouldn't understand about business? And your immediate reaction was VAT bills. Yeah. But I think another theme that came up was, admin. Like, people have got themselves into trouble with HMRC, don't quite understand it, have had bad advice. It's the thing that no one tells you about, so you just don't understand this, admin mountain.
Input, output.
Yeah.
I think everybody's journey has been unique, and it's been quite interesting listening to other people deal with different situations. Some people have gone out and got advice from accountants and various other sources online, etc., and some people just dealt with it head on. I think the biggest message that's come out from me over the last sort of, how long have we been doing this now? 6 months, nearly?
Yeah, it's been about that.
I think the biggest bit of advice for me is that there isn't a right way and there isn't a wrong way. And I think Wes said it on one of the episodes as well. It's your way. You know, and if you do it your way and it works, then that's great. And if you do it your way and it fails, then that's great also, because you've managed to learn. And you learn through your mistakes. And I think the older you get, the more wiser you get. I think Jo mentioned that in her episode, that the older you get, the more cautious you may be towards certain things. And you might see the pitfalls of doing those. And I think that maybe as you get older might be a hindrance to you. As opposed to, you know, doing something that you would have done years ago, thinking, because you know risk, you're just risk free, aren't you? You just go for it and it pays off. And I think that for me, I've definitely taken, the biggest thing for me is taking that, you know, there isn't a right way, there isn't a wrong way, it's your way. That's the biggest thing for me.
You do you.
Yeah, you do you.
But I think it's also, you know, it's knowing, and I think this is one of the reasons that this podcast came about at all, was that the three of us were having conversations about our businesses and thinking, you know, why was no one talking about this? And then it feels nice to have other people say the same things. Like for Move Digital, we have been in a little bit of an admin mountain in the last 6 months, and it has been, and it hasn't felt great all the time. And actually, to record episodes with other people who are like, yeah, been there. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I feel a bit better now, because actually, you know, it feels good that we're kind of getting out from under it and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't make me feel so much like, oh, God, you know, I'm the only person that's had to deal with this. And I think knowing that other people are going through the same thing is often just very helpful.
Yeah, I get a general consensus that it is very hard to run a business in the UK at the moment as well, because you know, stuff like HMRC and VAT and tax and support for businesses, where you get that from, it's a bit of a minefield. Whereas I spoke to a business owner the other day that has branched out to the US and set up over there, and he says he's found it much easier to grow over there.
And how is that possible? How is that possible that he should be able to go to another country completely unknown to him? The laws and policies around starting up a business over there are completely different over here, yet he's found it easier to start his business in the US than he has in the UK.
He said if you can run a business in the UK, you can definitely run a business in America.
Well, to go right back to the beginning of this podcast, Ben, you had the stats around, you know, 98% of the businesses in the UK are classed as small businesses.
Yeah.
So the idea that, you know, you're creating something that has just created a headache before you've even started. And, you know, I get it. There needs to be rules and regulations, and you need to have somebody who's going to give you good advice. But yeah, when it starts to feel like a mountain, I think Nikki and Emily were talking about, you know, the difficulties that they got themselves into because they'd had bad advice. You know, when it feels like you did all the things you were supposed to do and it didn't turn out right, that's tough.
Not
Even HR policies and things like that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous now. I think we've rewritten our employment contract or made amendments to it in the last 2 years, I think 6 times now, and the handbook's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got 15 people working for us. Do we really need to make that many changes to an employment contract and an employee handbook? In reality, do you really need that?
Yeah.
You know, are those employees going to need that at any point? Half of them end up in the bin anyway, or in the boot of someone's car. I've never seen someone sat on their desk or doing it, or anyone's come up to me going, "Oh, great midnight reading, by the way. Your employee handbook's the best one I've ever read."
I definitely think things like that go in the category of you don't need them until you need them.
Yeah.
And then when you need them, you know, all 6 revisions pay for themselves at once.
Yeah,
But
sure.
no, I understand what you mean. It's
It
difficult.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I suppose if we're talking about things like HMRC being a bit stressful, another topic that I think everybody spoke about and we've talked about as well for an episode is work-life balance.
Yep.
And I think that is, I mean, an ongoing struggle. I think everybody has highlighted that.
I think there's just an element of life in general. You know, I think people have got kids, they're busy with their kids, with their families, they've got outside interests, and they're trying to run a business as well. And I think that all combined just generates a lot of overwhelm, I think has been a common theme. I mean, I know Jo talked on the previous episode about burnout, and she's experienced that and how that affected her both mentally and eventually physically as well. And she had to be signed off for a period of time. I shared about that I had some stress-related problems, when first setting up the business. But yeah, there's definitely a common theme of people working maybe longer hours to get businesses off the ground, spinning lots of plates. When you're starting out, you're wearing lots of hats, so you're doing everything from finance to HR to, sales to marketing to everything. And I think that's a common theme, isn't it? That and Emily from More Driver Solutions said about her doing all the IT herself and plugging in stuff, and she got to that point where it was like, I'm going to pay someone to do this now because it's not the best use of my time. But you've got to get to that point as well, and I think it's quite hard to get there.
And where is that point? At what point do you say, I'm at the stage now where I can afford to have an IT company, or I can afford to have a HR company, or I can do podcasts, or I can pay for digital marketing? Where do you... There's no set time period that says you're at that point. I think you just, like you say, you do it your way, and you get to that point where you just think, I'm not crawling under the desk now, plugging in laptops and power cables. Someone else can do it.
Yeah, and I think everyone we spoke to has, something outside of work, and it is always a reason that they come to work, but at the same time, trying to balance the things that you do when you're not in your business with the business itself. And like you say, when you've picked up all these hats you never thought you'd be wearing, work-life balance, literally, in some cases, work-life balance is always going to be a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's still... something can come up at the end of the day, you're ready to go home and you've just got to deal with it sometimes, and that could be your evening gone. And I think things that we talked about around the connected world that we're in now, constant notifications, you sort of become available 24/7 sometimes. So the tendency to look at your phone late on in the evening.
I'm going to take that from Joe. I'm literally going to leave my phone downstairs on charge.
I think that's a good
I'm gonna do it because the first thing I do when I think within seconds of me opening my eyes, my literally hand is over, grabbing the phone and having a look at it, and I'm gonna stop it.
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy, is it? I don't think
it can't be healthy.
No,
it can't be healthy.
No.
Yeah, no, I do that, and I think it's really useful.
Interestingly enough, as well, most of the work-life balance also mentions some form of physical activity.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Not anyone saying, I do ballroom dancing, or I play, ping pong, or it was either running or gym. Running or gym. Running or gym.
Yeah.
There was no sort of, I do bowls.
Yeah.
Or...
No, that's true. Do you think
I
that's
play cricket.
Did we self-select runners?
Yeah, I think, definitely you two selected the runners.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
But everyone's got that thing that they do, which is their de-stress, get your head out of work, get your thoughts together.
I wonder if there's something in it, because you were just mentioning phones and checking phones. I wonder if there's something around a correlation between activities that you can't stop. You're not going to stop in the middle of a run to answer a phone call.
I have done.
Oh, okay. Bad example.
Whilst I'm ringing it.
Yeah, usually.
Oh, have you got one hand on a weight while you're speaking to someone
I've
in
answered
the
the phone to him, in the gym.
Okay, cool. Oh, that throws my theory out the window then.
But no, I think it is a chance to, at least you're not checking your phone, you're not looking at emails, you're concentrating on what you're doing. You can zone out to music or a podcast or whatever it might be. And it just gives you a bit of time to decompress. And I think, going for an hour run, that is an hour where you're not looking at your phone or responding to emails.
You should leave your phone now.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
For one run.
Yeah.
But I think
You'll get back going.
Yeah.
Be shaking.
Yeah. And I've had it where, I think I mentioned it in a previous episode, you sat around the dinner table and we sort of say to the kids, look, put your phones away while we're eating dinner. And then there's me, halfway through a meal, bing, yeah, and it's like, I've just got to take this, and it's 6:30 in the evening, and it's like, I don't need to take this, it can wait until tomorrow. They can leave a voicemail, I will get back to them. If it's mega urgent, they'll also ping me a message or a text message. And I think you mentioned about you'll only ever respond to text messages and nothing else. So if it's urgent, it's urgent. If it's not urgent, it can wait until tomorrow. And I think there's a lot of people that just absorb all of that. Yeah. And I've got to respond now. I've got to respond now, because we can respond now, and people start expecting that. And I think that's created this stress that it's not really stress. It's just there, isn't it? And it's
so we've definitely gained two things then. One is do it your way, And so far, the second is put your phone down.
Yeah.
So basically, what we tell our children, we should be telling ourselves as grown adults.
Yeah.
So put your phone down, and when you're doing those physical activities, don't have your phone with you.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
I think so. But then I thought another interesting thing as well, which I know Nikki and Emily particularly said, and you actually said this morning as well, was that they specifically prioritise physical activity because it makes them better at work. Yep. That they recognise that having that time off, having that time out, getting out of their headspace. I'm sure you feel the same about running. You were saying gym at lunchtime, your focus was much better.
It definitely was. I found myself more, because I have a habit of getting in early in the morning to try and do that hour before anybody else gets in the office, where I'm prioritising certain aspects of what I need to do within my job role. And I try and get that done in that hour before anyone else gets in the office so that I've not got any distractions, because it's quite an important task. Then for the rest of the day, I don't break for lunch. I don't go out for 15 minutes here or there. I literally will work through the day. But I have found myself at times looking at things I would normally be doing in the afternoon thinking, God, this is taking forever. And I think that's because I'm getting to the point where my brain is saying, enough.
It's fatigue, isn't it?
Yeah, just stop doing this and go and do something. And for the first time, it was yesterday, I said, no, I'm not going to do this. And I must admit, I was getting the heebie-jeebies on the way to the gym, because I was thinking, what if my phone rings and I don't answer it? Or what if, something happens and I'm not there? And I did it. And when I got back into the office, bang up to the point where I had to leave, I was literally like, oh my God, look at the time. And I'd done so much more work than I'd normally have done. And surprisingly, and I think I said it to you, the gym was packed in the middle of the day. It was nearly as busy as it was at 7 o'clock in the evening, which surprised me, because there's either a lot of people out at work in the UK at the moment, or there's a lot of people had the same idea I did.
Or there's a lot of people working more flexibly.
Well, true, yeah. This was 11 o'clock in the morning, though, so... typically people would go to work between 8 and 9, wouldn't they? I was in the office actually at 6 o'clock that morning. So for me, I'd already done a good 4 or 5 hours work before I'd gone to the gym. So, I was looking around the gym thinking, how long have they actually been at work? And have they been at work?
They're not going to work. They've all sold successful small businesses.
Ah,
it's going to be us.
That's what
it's going to be us in 6 months' time.
Maybe I should take the mics into the gym next time and just start doing...
Hi, what is it that you do?
Yeah, what is it you do?
But Laura, you also mentioned a point about working late. And if you're working late or you're working on a project, are you actually as productive that time of the night? Is it getting that 100% attention? If you're tired... your output isn't going to be as good, so keep it in the day and then keep your evenings to yourself. And I've been guilty of that as well. You need to get something done, you start making some mistakes, or you reread an email that you've sent and there's a few spelling mistakes in it, or but
the night before it was bang on. Someone changed it before you sent it.
So
that's always the way. That happens to me all the time. I think another interesting thing that we also noticed from a lot of our guests, and I know it was something that, again, we all talked about in the first season, is that everybody pretty much, and correct me if I'm wrong, said that they wouldn't go back to employment now that they have owned a small... Although, actually, I suppose notably, Jo was the exception because she had been back to employment, but now she's back to running her own business.
Yeah, but I think that her choice wasn't necessarily a choice, was it? It was like, my circumstances have changed. Okay, I can do a 9 till 5. That'll probably be quite helpful. And then she quickly realised that wasn't the case, and that going back to doing her own business. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't think anyone who's run their own business would like to go back into a work environment. I think it'd be tough to work in businesses now. I think, knowing what I know now, and seeing the way we've run our businesses, to go into an employed role now, I think would be really, really, really difficult for me.
And it's almost like...
Well, I certainly can't go to the gym at 11 o'clock. That's for sure.
Well, I think it's also the flip side of this, wearing all the hats. Suddenly you take off all the hats, but you must be looking at other people going, yeah, no, I know how to do that. Can I? You're just laughing at Ben because he's wearing a hat, for God's sake.
I'm just saying, when you said take off the hat, I was thinking, why hasn't he taken off his hat?
Take off the hat, Ben. Take off the hat. No, but I guess it's that thing of like, if you've had your nose in finance, in the finance side of your business, and then you went back to being employed, suddenly you'd be like, why can't I know that about finance? Why can't I do that? Why can't I be involved? Because actually, that'd help me get this done. I mean, I'm using it as an example, but that kind of like view across various different parts of your business. I feel like if I went back into an employed role and someone's like, no, it's just this, I'd be like, what? Like, no.
No, I've spoken to a few people previously that I know have gone back, but they were a certain type of person with a certain type of character that they struggled running a business, and it's not for me. I need to just turn up at 9 in the morning and finish at 5 and shut off, and that's it. And that's okay. But I think for the people that we've had on the podcast this season, I definitely think it's a certain type of person. You know, they're hardworking. They pour their emotion and soul into it. They like owning that. They like doing something that they love. And, you know, they want to back themselves, you know, and just, you know, they want that next thing and that next step and to grow and evolve something. And you just don't necessarily get that in an employed role.
That was my next point on the list, is the idea of like backing yourself. That has come up a lot as well. Like, whilst on the one hand it is all on you and it is hard work, the idea of actually being able to do that and create something successful, I think has been something that everybody's
I think that's a given, isn't it? You've got to back yourself, or otherwise it's just completely pointless. If you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe you can do it, there's no point in even attempting to run a business.
But also getting backing from your immediate family maybe, and your friends as well. And the guys,
if they don't back you, get rid of them.
I needed that from my wife at the beginning, you know. It was like, she was a bit risk averse, you know, and she was like, oh, but once I explained it to her and we talked about it, she's like, right, if you're going to go for it, let's go for it, you know. And she supported me through the highs and lows along the way, and you need that, because someone could easily turn around and say, well, why don't you just give it up, you know. So having that support is really important as well.
And I definitely think there's something in that around backing yourself. So my partner runs his own small business as well, which he set up after I'd been freelancing for quite some time. And I think there was, you know, and he was sort of like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. I was just like, yeah, 100%. I think you're good at it. I think you already have that feedback loop that's telling you this is a good idea. Let's do it. And, you know, to be able to have conversations with him saying, you know, oh, have you thought about this? We could do this, or things around that as well. Have that kind of support is really, it's really important.
100%. Yeah. That's a fairly easy one for me. Just back yourself, just get on with it.
No, absolutely. Another thing that I think a lot of people were talking about in different ways is kind of the freedom of running a small business. So I know Wes, for example, was saying one of the things that kind of came out of Red Rascal Creative was the fact that he's tried different things. Like now he, you know, does this video podcast. It wasn't necessarily something he was offering before, but it's just that way of being able to say, oh, you know, need VoIP telephones, like, let's go for it. And I think, and maybe that's the kind of, in the sort of admin, maybe that's kind of like the positive side of that. Like you inherit all these things you never wanted to do, but you also create this thing where you can do whatever you want with it as well.
I think freedom manifests in other ways as well. You know, there wasn't a question whether I was going to my son's sports day at school recently. You know, it's just, I'm going, you know, and I'm going to take the morning out to go and be there for that.
Did you do the dad's egg and spoon?
No, I didn't. No. They don't do that anymore. Health and safety, I believe.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But no.
Do you see that? Sorry, let's pause there. See the look on his face. He was gunning to win
that.
Yeah,
100 metre sprint, 100 metre sprint. He was on it.
But also, you know, getting back early to get kids to football training, you know, on a Wednesday night or whatever night it is, you can just be like, right, I'm going to finish at this time because I need to do that. So yeah, get that. That's the freedom that I get from running my own business, definitely, which I just wouldn't get in an employed role. But I think also being flexible with your staff so they can do those things as well is important. Because yeah, I've been in a very rigid role before, and it's like no. Whereas being saying, yeah, that's fine if you get off half an hour early or an hour early to go and do that, and that comes back in another way, you know, when you need it, you know, staying a bit later to do something on a project or what have you. So I think it's important to have that freedom, but also to be able to give a bit of freedom to your employees as well. Definitely. Yeah.
And another thing, and I know Joe particularly, I keep thinking of Joe because obviously it's one of the ones we recorded today as well, but we were talking about networking, and I think with Sarah and Carrie we were talking about kind of like a small business. Oh, right. I won't move. Should we just pause on the networking thing for a moment? Ben doesn't like networking.
It's like saying going back to door, isn't it? It's so...
But it's also, in the context of the podcast, it's nice to hear that other people have the same problem.
Yeah, it is, but... And obviously some of them have changed, clearly, because Joe said some of the events she's doing now have changed. But I think that networking is so readily available electronically, if you want to do it now. Turning up for a bacon roll and talking to people that have been in there for 10, 15 years. And I think it might be industry related as well. Because I know in the local areas here, there will be a presence of a telco company or an IT company or an energy company or something like that, where someone has been in there for 20 years. Like, you trying to break through that is, you know, you might as well headbutt a brick wall for 10 hours. It's just not going to work. You're just wasting your time, or pissing in the wind, as my granddad would say. You know, there are other ways, I think, now to utilise that time and be more effective, which I think we might talk about in some future pods that Ben's sales team are exploring at the moment. But yeah, we won't go too much into that. But yeah, I'll just networking.
I think networking has a different view to it as well, where networking with other businesses that do a similar thing to you. So Joe mentioned about, you know, there could potentially be competitors, but they're sharing knowledge. So it's like, I've got this problem, and someone will put their hand up and go, oh, I did something about that 6 months ago. So there's benefits in terms of peer networking. You've, as a result of the podcast, got connected with some previous employees, I think, that are now running their own businesses. And you've actually done some cross-selling with them, haven't you, as well? So
that might be a new angle. Maybe we should start that. Maybe we should start an IT and telco only networking event. We can have a bacon roll.
Just all comes back to the bacon. That's what it is. But I think I completely agree with your point. But I think also you're right. I think things are changing. So, for example, in the couple of communities, and Sarah and Carrie are in some of, they live in my town, and they're in some of the business communities that I'm part of as well. You know, for example, there is someone now who does accountancy but specializes in accountancy for creatives. So she understands the kind of business that you're trying to grow, and she understands the specific challenges around accountancy for those kind of firms. So obviously it's different because you're having a different conversation within that. You're not, you know, from a traditional industry, but then in a room full of traditional industries having a very traditional conversation. So I think things are kind of evolving quite a lot as well. But I just thought what Sarah and Carrie and other guests were saying around kind of what you touched on, knowledge sharing, and just even feeling like, oh God, we're all, you know, we're all feeling a bit like this. I think that's so beneficial.
Yeah, helping each other along the way.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons we started this, wasn't it? We were just like, oh, wait a minute. We're all having the same conversation about the same things, and we're not hearing it anywhere else. Yeah. Let's have a podcast.
Yeah.
If one person has taken one thing away that's assisted them, then what we've done has worked. It's as simple as that.
No, absolutely. That's kind of everything that we had sort of put down to cover. Was there anything else, like reflecting on season 2? Any final words?
I think I've been quite impressed with the uptake. You know, these things don't necessarily... And we're on a subject that is not necessarily like a taboo subject, you know, that's going to rocket off straight away. I think we've had over 612 views on total videos, and we've had over 17,000 short views, which I'm quite impressed with, to be fair, to start with.
Didn't check TikTok though, did you?
No. What, have you checked TikTok?
I haven't, but I can.
Okay.
I'm prepared to say you're not.
Insert TikTok stance here. But I think one of the things, I suppose, following on from that for me was I was thinking, well, this is great. We've had this conversation. We've decided that we want to be honest about this. We're happy to discuss these aspects of our business. Great. But I think I didn't really think about I wasn't sure if other people would be happy to do the same, because I didn't feel like that was a given. But actually, I think we've had guests on who have clearly demonstrated that people are really up for having those conversations and being like, you know, I wouldn't change this, but actually, you know, it's not always fun memes on Instagram and YouTube Shorts views.
I think people are prepared to be a little bit vulnerable and share their...
More so now.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. You know, people have had some hard times, and rather than push those to one side and everything's great and rosy, they are actually prepared to talk about them, which is definitely something that I
and lots of people, for example, reference like Diary of a CEO or other kind of more entrepreneurship podcasts. But I find it interesting that, you know, they're watching things like that, but then actually when it comes to having the conversation, they're like, I'm very happy to have a different, honest conversation about what this is really like, which I think is brilliant.
100%. Yeah. Roll on the next season.
Well, I was going to say, any prediction? I mean, right now while we're recording this, kind of season 3 is coming, but we don't have any fixed plans for it. Has either of you suddenly been like, bing, that's what we're going to do?
I think we should just start talking to more businesses within particular sectors and maybe pick 2 from the same industry, you know, around, maybe linked to any of our customer bases that we've got, and just see their different views. And not necessarily let's talk to the business owners, but let's maybe talk to the right-hand person who's gone along with that journey, who's seen the experience from a different side of the glass, maybe.
Yeah, I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah,
Ben?
I think going on the road again maybe was quite cool.
On the road.
Yeah.
I didn't come, did I? So.
But also, you know, we've talked about maybe doing like a virtual one, whether, you know, because you can't always get people to, you know, it's half a day, isn't it, really, for somebody to take out of their day to come. So being able to jump on like a Zoom type format would maybe get some more guests doing that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching this and all the other episodes of Living the Small Business Life. One final thank you would be to you, our viewers. Without you, we really couldn't continue doing this. So make sure you like and subscribe so you find out about season 3 first.